I want to begin, my dear, with the moment I knew for certain, not suspected, not feared, but knew, that the woman my whole family adored was a thief and a liar who had set out to ruin me. I was standing in my own kitchen, and I had just overheard her on my telephone in my hallway, speaking to my daughter in a low, sad, confidential voice. And she was saying, "I'm worried about your mum, love. She's getting ever so forgetful. She accused me of taking money from her purse yesterday. There was nothing missing, of course, bless her, but it's the confusion, isn't it? You can see how she is." And I stood in that kitchen, my dear, 79 years old, perfectly clear in my mind, listening to this woman calmly paint me as a confused old fool to my own child, the very same money she was denying having taken being, at that exact moment, in her coat pocket in my hall. And I understood with a terrible cold clarity that I was in a fight for my own family, and that I was at that moment losing it because every single person I loved believed her and not me. But to understand how I got there, you must let me take you back to the loneliest year of my life. My name is Joan, and I am 79 years old, and I live in a semi-detached house in a quiet suburb of Manchester, where I have lived for 46 years. For 51 of those years I was married to my husband, Bill, a steady, funny, comfortable man, the sort you don't notice you're leaning on until he's gone. And 3 years ago, my dear, he was gone. A stroke, very sudden, no long goodbye. One morning he was buttering his toast and complaining about the football, and by the evening I was a widow. And nothing, my dear, prepares you for the silence of a house after 51 years of another person in it. The grief I could just about bear. It was the loneliness that nearly finished me. The long empty afternoons, the cooking for one, the talking to the radio just to hear a voice. My children, I have two, a son, Andrew, and a daughter, Lisa. They were good to me, they really were, but they had their own busy lives, their work and their children, and they lived a fair drive away, and a telephone call on a Sunday is not the same as a person in the house. I was, my dear, desperately, achingly lonely. And a lonely person, I have learned, is a person with a door standing wide open and no notion of who might walk through it. It was Lisa who suggested the bereavement group. A kind idea, a group at the local community centre once a week, for people who'd lost someone, a chance to talk and have a cup of tea among folk who understood. And I went, reluctantly at first, and then gladly, because it did help, my dear, to sit with others who knew the particular shape of that silence. And it was there at the bereavement group in my 3rd or 4th week that I met Denise. Denise was perhaps 50, younger than most of us, warm and bustling and full of life. She said she'd lost her own mother recently and came to the group to help out, to give something back. And oh, she was wonderful, my dear, at first. She remembered everyone's names and everyone's troubles. She'd fetch your tea before you asked. She had a way of sitting close and taking your hand and looking right into your eyes and saying, "And how are you really, love?" that made you feel for the first time in months that someone had actually seen you. To a lonely, grieving old woman, my dear, that is a more powerful drug than you can possibly imagine. And Denise took a special interest in me. Of all the women in that group, it was me she singled out. She started giving me lifts home, then popping in for a cup of tea, then popping in most days. Within 2 months, my dear, Denise had become the central fact of my daily life, and I was so grateful, so flooded with relief at not being alone, that I never once stopped to ask why a busy woman of 50 would choose to spend nearly all her time with a lonely widow of 76. I want you to understand just how good it felt, my dear, because if you have never been that lonely, you will not believe how cheaply we can be bought. There was one evening early on, when I'd had a bad day. It would have been Bill's birthday, the first one without him, and I was sitting alone in the dark, not even bothering to put the lamps on, and there was a knock, and it was Denise, with a little cake she'd bought, just a small one from the supermarket, and a card. She'd remembered Bill's birthday when my own children, busy with their lives, had not, and we sat and we had a slice of cake, and she let me talk about him for 2 hours, and she listened, and she cried with me, and when she left I thought, that woman is an angel sent to me. An angel. My dear, I have thought a great deal since about how she knew it was Bill's birthday, for I never told her the date. She must have gone through my things even then, even that early, found it written somewhere and used it. The very kindness that won my heart was reconnaissance. The cake was bait, but I could not have told you that at the time, and that is the whole terrible cleverness of it. The trap does not feel like a trap. It feels like being loved at the exact moment you need it most. My family were delighted. That is the part I want you to understand, because it is the trap. When Lisa and Andrew saw that I had a friend, a cheerful, capable friend who'd taken me under her wing, who drove me to my appointments and kept me company, they were thrilled, and they were relieved, because if Mum had Denise, then Mum was all right and they could worry a little less. "Isn't she marvellous, Mum?" Lisa would say. "What a blessing she came along." And Denise was clever, my dear, so clever. She made sure to charm them completely. She'd be there when they visited, all smiles, making the tea in my kitchen as though it were her own, telling them how she just loved looking after their mum, and they ate it up. By the time the trouble started, Denise had spent months building exactly the thing she needed. A family who trusted her completely and who thought of her as the kind, reliable one, and slowly, slyly began to think of me as the difficult, declining one. Because that was her real work, my dear, underneath all the tea and the lifts. The isolation, it began so gently I didn't see it. Denise would say things like, "I tried to ring Lisa for you about your prescription, but she sounded ever so harassed. I don't think she's coping with everything. Poor love, best not to bother her, I'll sort it." And so a little wedge went in between me and my daughter. To Lisa, meanwhile, she'd say, "Your mum got a bit muddled today, didn't know what day it was, I didn't want to worry you." Another wedge. She made herself the necessary person in the middle, the one who managed everything, who passed the messages, who interpreted me to my family and my family to me. And every message, my dear, every single one was shaped to do two things: to make herself indispensable, and to make me seem that little bit more frail, more forgetful, more in need of the wonderful Denise who was so kindly handling it all. The cleverest piece of her work, my dear, was the day she nearly cost me my grandson's christening. Lisa had rung to arrange for me to come. It was to be a lovely day, the whole family together, and somehow between Lisa's telephone and my ears, the message got tangled, because Denise had taken the call and passed it on. I was told the wrong date. I arrived a week early to an empty church, my dear, a confused old woman standing alone in a porch in her best coat. And when the real day came, I was not there, and the family thought I simply hadn't bothered or had forgotten. And Denise was so sympathetic about it. Poor Joan, she does get in such a muddle now, and so very helpful in smoothing it all over. Do you see what she did? She engineered the very confusion she then pointed to as proof of my decline. She didn't just spread the story that I was losing my grip. She manufactured the evidence for it, and every wedge like that drove my family a little further from trusting their own mother, and a little further into trusting their saintly Denise. And then, my dear, the small things began to go missing. The first was a £10 note. I kept a little housekeeping money in a jar in the kitchen, the way my mother always did, and one day there was less in it than there should have been. Now I am an old woman, and old women misremember, and I might have let it go. But I had been a bookkeeper, my dear, for 30 years before I retired, and I have never in my life been wrong about money. It is the one thing my mind keeps perfect track of, the way some people never forget a face. There was £10 less in that jar than there should have been, and the only person who had been in my kitchen was Denise. I said nothing, but something in me, some old professional instinct, went quietly on alert, and I did what 30 years of bookkeeping had trained me to do. I started keeping accounts. Not openly, I was careful. In a little notebook I kept hidden, I began to write down each evening exactly what was in the jar, exactly what was in my purse, exactly what small valuables were where. And over the following weeks the notebook told a story that turned my blood cold. A £5 note here, a 10 there, a nice brooch of my mother's that I hadn't worn in years, gone from the drawer, a bottle of my good perfume. Never anything big enough to be sure of, never anything I could have proved, just a slow, steady, clever bleed, the kind designed never to be noticed by a forgetful old woman, and certainly never enough at once to make a fuss worth believing. She was, I realized, a professional. This was not greed. This was a trade, so I did the natural thing, my dear. I told my family, and that I learned was when the real horror began, because no one believed me. I sat Lisa down and I told her gently that I thought Denise might be taking small amounts of money, and I watched my own daughter's face fill not with concern for me but with a sort of sad, pitying alarm about me. "Oh, Mum," she said softly, "are you sure? Denise is so good to you, why would she? You don't think maybe you've just misremembered? Spent it and forgotten?" And there it was, my dear. The trap sprung. Because Denise had spent 6 months carefully laying the ground, 6 months of your mum got a bit muddled today, so that the very moment I raised the alarm, it landed not as a warning but as a symptom. The forgetful old woman is now accusing her saintly friend of theft. Isn't it sad? Isn't it just what Denise warned us about? My credibility, my dear, had been quietly stolen from me months before the money ever was, and I hadn't even felt it go. I cannot describe to you the loneliness of that, my dear, and I, who had known the loneliness of widowhood, did not think there was a worse one. To know a true thing, to know it with total certainty, and to watch the people you love most look at you with pity and decide you're imagining it. Andrew was worse than Lisa. He actually said to me, "Mum, I think you might be getting a bit paranoid. Maybe we should have a chat with the doctor." A chat with the doctor. My own son. That was Denise's masterpiece. You see, she had so thoroughly made me out to be declining that my own clear-eyed accusation became the very proof of my decline. The cleverer I was, the more I argued, the madder I seemed. She had built me a cage out of my family's love, and the more I rattled the bars, the more they were sure I belonged in it. I will tell you the cruelest thing of all about being disbelieved, my dear, because I think it is not understood by people who have never had it done to them. It is not only that others stop trusting you, it is that you begin to stop trusting yourself. When two people you love look at you with pity and say, "Are you sure, Mum?" a worm gets into your own mind and it whispers, "Are you sure?" You start to second-guess things you know perfectly well. You count the jar twice and then doubt your own counting. You wonder whether the brooch was really there last week or whether you only think it was. That is the most dangerous moment, my dear, not when they take your money, but when they take your faith in your own memory, because once that goes you will hand them everything else without a fight. Denise was not really after my £10 notes. She was after my certainty. The money was just what she helped herself to along the way. There was a night, my dear, after Andrew said that about the doctor, when I sat alone in my kitchen and I very nearly gave up. I very nearly thought, perhaps they are right. Perhaps I am losing my grip. Perhaps a lonely old fool is exactly what I am. And I want you to remember that feeling, because it is how these people win. They make you doubt your own mind until you hand it over to them. But then, my dear, I looked at my notebook. My bookkeeper's notebook, full of dates and figures in my own neat hand. And I thought, the figures don't lie. I have never in my life been wrong about money, and I am not wrong now. And if no one will believe my word, then I shall just have to get them something better than my word. I shall get them proof. So the lonely old fool, my dear, went to war, quietly, the way we do. First I stopped accusing. That was the hardest part, to swallow it, to smile at Denise, to let her think she'd won and that I'd been safely discredited. But I understood now that as long as I was the hysterical accuser, nothing I said would count. So I went quiet and I watched and I let her relax. Second, I set a trap of my own, a proper bookkeeper's audit. I marked my banknotes. I took a soft pencil and made a tiny mark in the corner of several notes in my jar and my purse, and I wrote down their serial numbers, every one. If those exact notes turned up in Denise's possession, that would be a fact, my dear, not a feeling. Third, and most importantly, I got myself a witness who could not be called confused. I had my neighbour's grandson, a nice lad who was clever with such things, help me set up one of those little doorbell cameras, the kind that records, pointed not at the door but quietly at the hall table where my handbag sat. I told no one. Not Lisa, not Andrew, certainly not Denise. I simply waited, and I kept my accounts and I let the trap sit. And those were strange days, my dear, I won't pretend otherwise. To smile at a woman across your own kitchen table, to thank her for the lift, to let her squeeze your hand and call you love, all the while knowing what she is and knowing that the little camera in the hall is patiently waiting for her to show her hand. It takes something out of a person, that kind of pretending. I have never been a good liar, my dear, but I found I could do it for my children, for my own good name, for the 3 women I didn't yet know existed. I would wave Denise off at the door with a smile, and then I would go in and sit down and my legs would be shaking. An old woman playing a long game against a professional in her own front room with no one in the world on her side. But I had the figures. And the figures, my dear, are very patient. They do not get frightened. They do not lose their nerve at the kitchen table. They simply wait in their neat columns for the day the truth is finally allowed to be heard. And the day came. It did not take long. Within a fortnight, the little camera had recorded in plain daylight Denise lifting a £20 note from my purse on the hall table and tucking it into her coat. The very afternoon she then stood in my hallway and told my daughter on the telephone that I was confused and had falsely accused her of stealing. I had it all, my dear. The theft and the cover-up in the same hour, in her own voice and her own hand. And 2 of the marked notes, when it came to it, were found in her purse, serial numbers and all. But I did not go to my family with it, my dear. Not first. Because I had learned my lesson about how easily Denise could twist things, and I wanted this done properly, beyond any possibility of doubt or charm. So I went instead to the police, and it is here, my dear, that the full picture finally came into view, for when I sat down with a kind, patient officer and showed her my notebook and my recording and my marked notes, she went very still, and then she said something I will never forget. "Mrs. Halliday," she said, "you are not the first person to come to us about this woman. You are the 4th. Denise, it transpired, was not her real name. She was known to the police, she had a method, and I had been living inside it. She haunted bereavement groups and Lonely Hearts clubs and church coffee mornings across the whole region. And she collected freshly widowed older women, the way other people collect stamps, befriending them in their loneliest hour, isolating them from their families with that same patient wedgework, and bleeding them slowly, moving on before any one theft grew large enough to prove. 3 other women had reported her. None had had quite enough to make it stick. None of them, my dear, had been a bookkeeper for 30 years. None of them had kept the accounts. I met one of those women afterwards, my dear, a gentle soul called Margaret, 82, who had lost not just money to Denise but very nearly her son, for the wedge work had driven them apart and they had barely spoken in a year by the time it all came out. We had tea together, the two of us, two old women who had been hunted by the same wolf, and she held my hand and she said, "I knew, Joan, in here I knew, but she made me feel so mad for knowing that I stopped saying it out loud. You said it out loud, you wrote it down. I wish I'd been brave enough to write it down." And I told her it wasn't bravery, my dear, it was only an old habit and a stubborn streak, but I have thought since that perhaps those are very close to the same thing in the end. The willingness to keep insisting on what you know, quietly in writing, when the whole world is telling you to let it go, perhaps that is all bravery ever really is. The unmasking, when it came, was not the dramatic scene you might imagine. It was quiet, and it was thorough, and it was final. The police had what they needed, my evidence was the piece that completed theirs, and Denise was arrested. And in time she was charged, not just over me but over the others too, for my careful records turned out to be the key that unlocked all of it. And the moment I have never forgotten, my dear, was not her arrest. It was the morning my daughter Lisa came to my house, having been told everything by the police, and stood in my kitchen white-faced and looked at her mother, the mother she had pitied and doubted and wanted to take to the doctor, and burst into tears and said, "Mum, I'm so sorry. You were right. You were right the whole time. And we didn't believe you. We chose to believe her over you. Can you ever forgive us?" Andrew came too the next day, my big grown son who'd wanted to take me to the doctor, and he could barely get his words out. He sat at my kitchen table and he wept like a boy and he said, "I called you paranoid, Mum. I sat in this kitchen and I called my own mother paranoid, and all the time you were the only one of us telling the truth. How did you do it? How did you keep your head when all of us were telling you that you'd lost it?" And I told him the truth, my dear. I said, because I kept the accounts, love. When you can't trust the people around you to believe what you know, you write down what you know in dates and figures in your own hand, and you let the figures hold the line for you until someone's finally ready to listen. The figures kept my head for me when none of you would help me hold it. That, my dear, was the real wound. And the real healings. Not the money was never really the point, and most of it was gone. It was being believed again. It was having my own mind, my own word, my own self handed back to me by the children who had, without ever meaning to, let a stranger take it away. Now, here is the lesson, my dear, and it is a hard, important one, so listen closely. Loneliness is a door, and there are people in this world who go looking for open doors. When someone has just lost a husband or a wife, when they are grieving and isolated and aching for company, they are not at their sharpest, and the predators know this, and they do not look like predators. They look like a blessing. They look like the answer to a family's prayers. They are warm and helpful, and they take mum off your hands, and everyone is so relieved that no one asks the only question that matters. Why is this person with their own life to lead, choosing to spend it on my lonely relative? Ask that question, my dear. Not cynically, there are true angels in this world, and some kind souls really do befriend the lonely for love. But ask it. Stay close enough to know the answer. And here is the second lesson, the one I most want the families to hear. When your elderly mother or father tells you something is wrong, when they say money is missing, or a friend isn't what they seem, do not, I beg you, reach first for the explanation that they are confused. That is the easy door, and it is the very door the clever ones are counting on you to walk through. An old person's certainty is not the same as an old person's confusion, and the people who love them ought to be able to tell the difference. I knew that money was missing the way I knew my own name, and the people who should have known me best chose, because it was easier and a stranger had primed them to believe I'd lost my mind instead. Believe your elders, my dear. Check. By all means, but start from belief, not from pity. Pity, it turns out, is just another open door. And to those of you who are lonely tonight, as I was, who are perhaps listening to this very story because the house is too quiet, let me say this last thing gently. Your loneliness is real, and it deserves real company, and you must not let what happened to me frighten you into trusting no one, for that is its own kind of prison. But trust the quiet voice. The one that notices the £10 missing from the jar, one that wonders why. That voice is not your confusion, my dear. Very often it is the last clear-eyed part of you still standing guard. Listen to it, and do not let one bad experience turn your heart to stone, my dear, for that is the last cruelty these people do. They teach the lonely never to open the door again, and a closed heart is its own cold prison. There are still good souls in this world who will befriend you for nothing but love. The trick is not to trust no one. The trick is to keep your own clear eyes open even while you let someone in. It was a bookkeeper's instinct that saved me in the end, a stubborn old habit of never being wrong about money, and a refusal, when everyone I loved had given up on my mind to give up on it myself. Keep your own accounts, my dear, in every sense, and never let anyone, however charming, convince you that you cannot trust yourself. Thank you for sitting with me tonight. Check on the lonely ones you love this week and ask the kind question. Good night and God bless.